and welcome to Finextra TV. We're reporting from UK FinTech Week and we're at IFGS 2023 in London. Kindly joining me now, straight off her session on stage, is Nadia Edwards-Dashti from Harrington Starr. So Nadia, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Great opportunity.
Really good to have you on. Like I say, you've just come off the stage and the session was called Scaling with Purpose, How to Build a Positive Culture and Proper Governance Through Growth. So it's quite a mouthful, but a really interesting one. Tell us, what were the kind of main points that came out of the session?
Yeah, it was such a fantastic session. The panellists were amazing, and it was a real mix of opinion and mix of experience. So some larger companies, smaller companies, startups, but really we were talking about what does positive culture actually look like? Like, what do we mean by that?
Yeah.
Who's in charge of creating a culture? All of us. But it's being able to say that out loud. Mm-hmm. And then how do you govern that? And what do you do when it goes wrong? And then what do you do when the market, as we've seen, starts to become volatile? If we look at the market from this year compared to last year, the whole environment is totally different.
Yeah.
Just the general feeling that people have by walking into their workplaces is totally different. How do you respond to that? And how do you keep on building a positive culture around that, despite changes, despite challenges? So it was fascinating.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed it.
All right, it's some really interesting questions there. So let's delve into a bit more detail and get your thoughts and responses to those questions then. So what do you think a good working culture looks like then? What's your advice there?
Well, I think what came out of the panel, and we all agreed on it, was that it's got to be front and centre of any organisation at any stage of growth all the time. And there was something that was said which I really related to, which was that creating a positive culture is actually a moving target. And if you just accept that, then you know you've got to be always switched on for it. What is our culture right now? Mm-hmm. And another thing that was said was everybody has a culture in their organisation, whether you like it or not. It's up to you to define it into a positive one. Even if it is a negative one right now, how can you change it? But that whole element of it, it's not one static thing, it's constantly changing, and everybody is responsible for that change. We need to make sure that this is front and centre at every board meeting, on every agenda, considering how we can be improving it and increasing that momentum of improvement despite whatever challenges come our way. So that front and centre piece, I think that's the main thing that we want to be thinking about when it comes to positive culture.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice and maybe a message to life there as well could be found in that. All right, so what about market volatility? You spoke about that on stage. What do you think business leaders should be thinking about in that space?
Yeah, and I think again, however volatile the market gets, it's the understanding that without a positive culture, we're already losing lots of money. We're already spending the money on our people by not getting it right. And actually, this whole thought process of culture, inclusion, wellness, we'll get to that once we've sorted out the business. Well, sorry, but this is the business. This is the foundation of the business. And that was something that we kept going back to on stage, really understanding that this culture piece is not, and one of the panelists said, it's not just fluffy. And I think, a lot of people, when they listen to conversations around inclusion, wellness and culture, they think, oh, that fluffy stuff, that's not the cogs of the business. But actually, if we pause for a moment and we think as business leaders, these are the cogs of our business, because everything about financial technology today is about change. It's about being agile. It's about being able to handle whatever the next problem is. And if we've got a great team of people who are all thinking through growth mindset eyes and thinking that challenge is something that will give them an opportunity because they are in a business whose culture really relishes an opportunity, then suddenly everything is capable of happening within a business. On the flip side, by not looking at this, churn goes up, retention goes down, you lose staff at an enormous rate, and that is something that we can measure. We can measure that churn, we can measure the cost of that churn, we can measure the cost of investment needed to replace staff, and we can also measure the negative impact that has on culture. So for me, this is such an important topic, and I would just love more people to be thinking about it.
Exactly, it's the foundations of the company, isn't it? Absolutely. So to summarise then, I know I have an idea of what makes a nice and good, productive workplace, but what about you?
So our organisation, Harrington Starr, we're a recruitment agency. We've got a huge database of contacts and we believe in communicating with them well. So we are constantly running surveys. The amount of people I speak to, you would be shocked with the amount of information I gather. But I wanted to share some stats on a recent survey that we got back. So this survey went out and was participated in by 8,000 people. And 67% of the respondents said, apart from money, the one thing that would have kept them in their last company is if only someone asked them their opinion. And this to me is huge. Another thing that came out of this was that only 18% of people were truly clear on what they needed to do to progress within business. So again, another communication issue. When we look at exactly what's happening in the marketplace even today, most people, and it came out back at something like 88%, most people are receiving 2 to 3 headhunt calls every single week.
Wow.
And these are people that aren't looking for work. So for me, what do people want? People want to talk, they want to be listened to, they want to have their input in businesses, and they want to think that that matters. They want to know that that matters, and they want to see a response to that. So culture to me is absolutely central, but it's active culture and active cultural architecture, which I believe is everybody being involved in that.
Some really good pearls of wisdom there. So those leaders listening in, I think the message is clear, active culture. But Nadia, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I'll let you get back to the event, but thanks, it's been great.
Thank you.